Alright, today we are looking at 1 Nephi chapter 11 verse 6, and when I had spoken these words, the Spirit cried with a loud voice, saying, Hosanna to the Lord, the Most High God, for he is God over all the earth, yea, even above all, and blessed art thou, Nephi, because thou believest in the Son of the Most High God. Wherefore thou shalt behold the things which thou hast desired. We're going to be looking at this as, again, a temple vision that Nephi is having, and how the word blessed as a code word helps us understand that. Alright, again, any of this stuff from chapter 8 or chapter 11 referencing the visions of Lehi or Nephi as temple texts are not my discovery. There are people much smarter than me. Margaret Barker, maybe first and foremost, a non-LDS scriptorian and scholar. She was really one of the first people to really point out in the Old Testament where there had been changes made, where Asherah had been taken out of the temple by Hezekiah and Josiah, where these reformations had happened, and really to discover that a lot of the ancient Jews were not on board with this. There seemed to be a faction of Jews who thought that it should happen, and a faction of Jews that thought it shouldn't happen, and there was a division and strife, and when we read the Book of Mormon, we see exactly that going on. So she did great work with the Old Testament, highlighting where Asherah was removed, where Asherah is mentioned, where the ancient temple showed Asherah the mother goddess or heavenly mother, and really paved the way for guys like David Butler, who then took that research and really figured out everything that the Book of Mormon was saying in response to that. And John W. Welch is very important in this as well, who was one of the first people to really recognize the Sermon on the Mount as also a temple ordinance. So all three of these people made vital discoveries, and I'm just trying to bring these things together in a simplified form. Alright, quick background: if you haven't seen the other videos on the other verses, we're hypothesizing that this is a temple text, a temple ordinance that's going on with Lehi in chapter 8 and Nephi in chapter 11. What does the old world temple look like? During Nephi and Lehi's time, what did the temple look like, and what should have it looked like? Well, it consisted of a three-part space. Solomon's temple had three spots, three spaces, same with the tabernacle. It had an outer courtyard that was called the Ulam. It had a inner courtyard, an inner section that was called the Hekal, and the Debir, which was the Holy of Holies, the third space. Within the third space, prior to 750 BC or so, the third space consisted of the Ark of the Covenant, which is the ark where God sat, his throne. So God the Father, Elohim. And then we had Heavenly Mother, Asherah, was represented by a tree of life inside the Holy of Holies, or eventually a menorah made that same symbol. And then we had the fruit of the tree, or a rod, was represented in the Holy of Holies as the Savior Jesus Christ. So we had the entire heavenly family within the Holy of Holies, which to me is the greatest connection to our current temple ordinances, is that within the Holy of Holies was an eternal family. And that's what we go to the temple to do today, is create eternal families. And that's what used to be represented in the temple prior to 800 BC, prior to the reformations of Josiah and Hezekiah and the changes that they made that Lehi and Nephi were not on board with. So just a quick, this is a living document that we're continuing to work on, but this is kind of the three-part space prior to going into the temple. There's a cleansing and washing, there's 2 trees, 2 columns, and anointing. A lot of the stories in the scriptures follow this pattern. Then we go into a lone and dreary world, a celestial kingdom, oppression, bondage. There's an altar, usually in the Ulam, and then we move from the Ulam to the next space, which is the Hekal. There's an incense, a mist, a fog, something that makes it difficult to see, and then we get to the Holy of Holies, the third space, where Elohim, eternal families happen, celestial kingdom, the Ark of the Covenant, all the blessings associated with those things all come there in the Holy of Holies. So just take any scriptural story from the Bible, and you can almost fit it into this this pattern. The entire scriptures, I believe, are teaching us about this temple pattern, and the temple itself is teaching us about this pattern. Alright, so our hypothesis obviously is that the visions of Lehi, Nephi, Isaiah, Enoch, Daniel, and others were all temple visions, restoring what had been changed or removed. So they all lived in a time where the temple had been changed and altered. The temple ordinances were not the same as they were previously. They all had visions that were almost identical. They used different words, different adjectives, different nouns for describing the same things, but very similar visions that they all had, where they go through three-part space and follow that pattern that we showed on the previous slide. So what was changed? What was removed from the Bible? Why can't we see this more clearly? So in the Hebrew Bible, one of the words that's been translated as groves really should be translated as Asherah, which is the Heavenly Mother, or Asherah poles, which was a representation of Asherah. So you can look in, if you go down to 2 Kings 18 and 4, 2 Kings 23 and 14, these verses make no sense the way they've been translated. King Hezekiah removed the high places and break the images and cut down the groves. Josiah break in pieces the images and cut down the groves. What groves are they talking about? Well, they're talking about removing things from the temple. There's not a grove inside the temple. What there was an Asherah tree. So this it's been hidden from our sight what exactly happened, but this should have been translated Asherah tree. In many of the New World translations, it is translated Asherah pole or Asherah tree. If you go back, look in Deuteronomy was written by people who wanted the reformations to happen. But thus shall ye deal with them, ye shall destroy their altars and break down their images and cut down their Asherah poles and burn their graven images with fire. The writers of Deuteronomy did not want Asherah represented in the temple and had it removed. So these are just some places within the Bible where we see the hints to this that were really exposed by Margaret Barker. Alright, here's a spot where it's coded for us. So the writer of Proverbs obviously was on team Lehi, Nephi, and believed that Asherah was part of this divine family that is so important to our temple worship. So understand now, happy is Asher. So you got to understand the Hebrews use puns in everything. So anytime we see happy, we see Asher. Asherah is the mother goddess, so we can see the pun there. And she was known as the goddess of wisdom, not only in Hebrew scholarship anciently, but also in Canaanite tradition. Let's read Proverbs 13 through 18. Happy, Asher, like Asherah, is the man who finds wisdom. Mother goddess of wisdom is Asherah. So Asher is the man who finds the mother goddess, Asherah. And the man who gains understanding. For her, now we're talking about this, what he's found is wisdom, and now we're talking about wisdom as a feminine because it is Asherah. For her proceeds are better than the profits of silver, and her gain than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies. Precious is an important adjective. What did Nephi say about the word precious? What was removed from the Bible? The most plain and precious things. What is the most precious thing according to Proverbs? Asher, or wisdom, or the mother goddess, this feminine, this divine feminine, Asherah, is precious. Above all, Nephi said, the plain and precious things have been removed from the Bible, and all things you desire cannot compare to her. The length of days is at her right hand, and in her left hand riches and honor. Her ways are the ways of pleasantness, and her paths are peace. She is a tree of life. If you didn't pick it up, verse 3 through 17, he's like, all right, she's the tree of life. This is Asherah, represented by the tree of life. The tree of life is what was in the temple, and the tree of life is exactly what Lehi and Nephi see in the third part of their vision. To those who take hold of her, and happy, again, Asher, are all those who attain her, or get to the third part of the temple, or third space. 1 Nephi 8:10, and it came to pass that I beheld a tree, this is the tree of life, whose fruit was desirable to make one happy. Again, happy means Asher. We're talking about the tree of life. We're talking about Asherah here. All right, rewind a little bit. Now we're going to go back to the New Testament. Sermon on the Mount. This was a discovery again by John W. Welch, who recognized that the patterns within the Sermon on the Mount had to do with a lot of teachings, and then that would be followed by covenants that would be made in today's temple ordinances. But what we also have is the Beatitudes. blessed. Blessed, 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 blessed. Well, what's the Hebrew translation for blessed? Asherah. So we're talking about, we're getting to the third room of the temple. What are the blessings that come? Asherah, 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 or Asherah, Asherah, Asherah. One other way this could be translated besides blessed, you could also say, here is your joy, or here is your happiness, or even more specifically, here is your Asherah. So here is the tree of life, here is the blessings associated with it. So now when we look at 1 Nephi 11:6, under that context, we see what the Spirit is promising to Nephi here. He says, "And when I had spoken these words, the Spirit cried with a loud voice, saying, Hosanna to the Lord, the Most High God, for he is God above all the earth. We have God Elohim, yea, even above all. And blessed Asherah, or Asherah, is mentioned, Nephi, because thou believest in the Son of the Most High God." So we have all three of the members of the eternal family that are represented in the third part of the space being mentioned here in this verse. And again, like we mentioned before, blessed could very well have been translated as here is your Asherah, or at the very least, it's a pun on the name Asherah.